Welcome back to the Money Under the Mattress podcast. My name is Mitchell and my co-host is Jake. And today we'll be going over the struggles of having a large cap position, the importance of the science of hitting, as well as discuss Jake and I's new newsletters on Substack. So how are we doing today, Jake?
Doing pretty good. It's always nice to see Bubba in the green. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Was reading the Arlington Value Capital letters the last couple of days of Alan Measham. I think that's what his name was. Pretty interesting letters. Also reading the history of the financial history of Berkshire Hathaway by Adam Mead, another good book. Reading that for the second time actually. And I believe we'll be having Adam Mead on later on next month, early August. So it'll be interesting to talk to him about his book. But yeah, no, it's been pretty good lately. I guess we'll go into our first topic of the day, the importance of the science of hitting, and talking about the no-called strikes that Warren Buffett talks about. So for anyone that's not up to date on the science of hitting or what it is, the Science of Hitting was a book that Ted Williams wrote about. I'm not sure exactly. I haven't read the book, but I know the philosophy around a part of the book, and it talks about there's a picture of Ted Williams, and it's him sitting next to the batter's box within baseball. So Ted Williams was a baseball player for the Red Sox way back in the day. I'm not sure exactly the years or anything like that. I'm not too into depth on Red Sox history or anything like that, but the reason I'm talking about this today is Warren Buffett talked about it a few times. He went over the science of hitting and the philosophy around it in a talk at Georgetown. Do you remember, Jake?
I'm not sure if it was at Georgetown, but I remember watching a video or reading a write-up about it.
Mm-hmm. And so Warren Buffett talks about how in baseball there's obviously 3 strikes. So 3 strikes and you're out. And so if you're a baseball player such as Ted Williams, you can't really sit at the batter's box for too long before you're called out. In investing, there's no so-called strikes. So you can sit at the batter's box on investing and let Mr. Market throw pitch after pitch. And you can sit there as long as you want, which is probably one of the biggest advantages to investing over any other type of profession, in my opinion. When you say, Jake?
Yeah, I'd have to say it's just being able to actually sit there is another thing.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, I've seen many times, and I'm guessing you have too, Jake, is a lot of investors will sit at this so-called batter's box within our analogy, and they're not patient enough. And so they'll start swinging at, things that are kind of in the dirt or another opinions or another thought is out of their circle of competence. But going back to the whole batter's box of Ted Williams, it's 77 dots. So if you guys have ever watched baseball, you might have seen a little square next to the batter. If you're watching on TV, if it's live, then it's obviously not going to be there. And so there's 77 dots. Each is the size of a baseball, and it has Ted Williams sitting next to it. You can look it up on Google. Just look up the science of hitting batter's box picture.
Or Ted Williams 400.
Yeah. So Ted Williams kind of printed out where if the pitcher would throw straight down the middle, what's the percentage that he'll hit? So he had a 400. So it means that he had a 40% chance that he was going to hit, compared to, if you went down bottom right on the box, then he's got a 25% chance of hitting. And so if you're a pitcher, obviously you want to be throwing down bottom right. Back to our analogy with investing, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Monique Fabry, they'll sit there patiently in the batter's box and let pitch after pitch go by. Some of them are straight down the middle and they miss them, and they're all right with that. They can let it float by. A lot of them will be in the dirt. They still don't swing. only when a lot of aspects line up. Obviously, it's in their circle of competence. It's a great price, quality management, anything that you'd be interested in for an investment. Once that crosses the plate, then they hit. And it kind of parlays into our next topic of having a large cash position and the psychology behind having a large cash position. So for me personally, I have a cash position of 35% right now, which is fairly high. I like to have it around probably 15 as I'm getting new income coming in into the portfolio from outside sources. But yeah, like I have a 35% cash position, and a lot of people in my position would be kind of struggling with the psychological fact that you want to put money into investments, and so they might not do as much due diligence on it. Their margin of safety might not be there. For an example, I'm always looking for a margin of safety of at least 50%. So I think there's the value of the stock is $1. I want to buy it for at least 50% or 50 cents or under. A lot of people might be impatient and see the stock worth $1 and it's only selling for 80 or 90 cents. And they're like, you know what? I'll put a little bit of money into it because I don't want to sit here with a bunch of cash and have maybe a greater risk of underperforming. Would you say, Jake?
Yeah, I'd say like huge cash positions put a lot of pressure on investors.
Mm-hmm.
And we're lucky right now that we get to start off and we don't really have much pressure. It's not like we're running a fund or anything where we have outside investors that we have to report to.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't think that would change at least how I would do things. It wouldn't affect me very much.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely does. Or at least I've heard other fund managers talk about how there is pressure. And that's kind of the reason why Warren decided to turn into a company rather than just a partnership. So you didn't have to worry about withdrawals from investors.
True. I mean, they can sell out of his stock, but then that means that he's just going to buy more of it. So he almost hopes that it goes down in price, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, like, if you went to a Red Sox game, let's say, and, I think Jackie Bradley Jr. still plays for the Red Sox. And if he sat at the plate, let's say, and there was a so-so pitcher that was throwing him really good strikes right down the middle, right where he wants it, and he didn't swing. After a couple balls that go by him, there's going to be a couple hecklers in the stand saying, "Swing, you bum, swing." And so when you run a big fund like that in investing, you're going to have similar hecklers. Let's say if you're an investor like, Bill Miller, let's say, right? If Bill Miller underperformed for a couple of years, maybe said that he didn't like, what are the big things that have gone on? Like if he didn't like Google, Facebook, Apple, and he was kind of not really swinging on anything, then after a couple of years, then his investors will sell out. And back to our analogy, in other words, saying swing you bum, based on the fact that you underperformed, you didn't understand great businesses when they came across your plate. There's a multitude of different things that someone would sell out of a fund or be kind of aggravated with their fund manager. And that's where the competitive advantage comes for me and Jake or any other personal investor. And they don't have anybody behind them saying swing, swing, swing. It's only themselves that are the ones that are saying, I should be swinging. I should be swinging. And as long as you can get over that kind of hump, then I think that's where it makes the good investors from the bad ones.
And I'd like to add something onto that. So when you think of like averages, so when they talk about like the 400 batting average,
mm-hmm.
in investing, I've heard other investors talk about batting averages on stocks that they invest in. And I got thinking, I was like, you could either be a low hitting percentage investor, but when you do hit one, you nail it out of the park. or you could be a person who has a high batting average and you're consistently trucking along at a half decent return.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking, like, when you win, I guess you want to, like, what we're looking for is some asymmetry, right? So when we hit big, we basically want to find an investment that has very, very low downside and a lot of upside. And I find that when you wait for a great pitch to come across the plate, you tend to be able to find more asymmetry within those pitches. Where if you're swinging at everything, you're kind of your downside could be muted, or even your upside's muted because you're just swinging at everything. You're not waiting for a good asymmetry bet to come along with the plate. So
I think that makes
understand.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You know, there's a lot of people. I've always, yeah. What do you think, Jake? This is a good question that I've read multiple times from people saying, um, investing is an art, investing is a science, investing is all mathematical, investing is all psychological. Like, what do you think investing really is?
Well, want to get down to it, and you want to quote like Charlie Munger and all them. All good investing is value investing. So you're just basically buying something for less than it's worth. But at the same time, there's different ways to get returns. Not saying they're always gonna be outsized, but you got like quantitative investing, like value investing.
But I'm saying the way that we invest, hypothetically, like, yeah, because if you do quant investing, then it's all mathematical, obviously. If you're doing technical analysis, then I guess you could say that's pretty well mathematical. But the way that we're doing fundamentals based on quality of management, what do you see that?
What do you mean by that? Like, what are you trying to ask? Like, what's the question?
The way that we invest, would you say it's an art, a science?
Oh, it's all an
mathematics.
art. It's all an art because at the end of the day, you're trying to forecast the future. And, like, so does the weatherman, and he doesn't always get it right. So that's why you need to build in a little margin of safety there so that, at the end of the day, you tend to do well over time, even if you're not right 100% of the time, which no one ever is.
Yeah, I mean, I see investing as same what you just said is, I see it as an art that's based around statistics. I think it's an art because you are forecasting, like you said, but there's also everyone evaluates you on your statistics of your past performance. But then there's also psychology, which we can go into the psychology of money, which is a great book by Morgan Housel. Recommended to anybody that's out there hasn't read it yet. But this is where the psychology comes in, or the psychological aspect comes into investing, is the patience part of it, and sitting on your hands and doing nothing for months or possibly years or even a decade. For some investors, it's got to be eating up people's minds sometimes when, who's somebody that hasn't made a big bet in a while. Like, let's say before Charlie Munger invested in Bubba, he was sitting on his hands for
but that wouldn't
close
have
to
hurt
10
him. I
years.
don't think that wouldn't have hurt him though, mentally.
No, exactly. But I'm saying that comes back to the good investors from the bad investors, and it's all a psychological game.
But at the same time, there's been lots of people in between that have made some really, really good investments. And you know what? Charlie Munger probably could have made some really, really good investments, but
could have, yeah. No, exactly.
It seems like he wants to go for the more, like, really in a sweet spot type of investments. And you know what? I know, like, Warren Buffett, they say like he has like a bunch of cash. And if you really get down to it, like, it's not a huge percentage of the actual market cap of Berkshire, especially after like the cash that should be used for like reserves for the insurance part. But he did make, in, was it 2016, the Apple bet? That was a pretty big bet that he made, and he absolutely hit a home run. It's been like 40% a year since. So, like, I don't know. Like, people say like, oh, Warren just, he lost it, but like that Apple bet was pretty impressive to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. Buying Apple back in 2016. cloning Warren Buffett on that one would have been something. As long as it's in your circle of competence, you got it at a decent price. Yeah, no, that would have been unreal. But do you find? I mean, I could probably answer this for you, but do you find that you ever get chewed up sitting at the batter's box and letting pitch by pitch go by? So, whether it's RH, you let RH, like we watched Restoration Hardware go by. Well, I mean, we watched Tesla go by. We watched Google go by. What are some big ones that we let go by?
We've let a lot go by. We let Lowe's go by.
Lowe's was a big one that we let go by. I mean, some people would say
many.
Costco at 300 was a pitch that we let go by. Amazon, a lot of people let a lot of things go by based on sort of competence as well as price. But yeah, you go.
I've let like 3 stocks go by this week.
Yep.
Like I let them go by all the time, and it just doesn't bother me because I knew I really didn't know anything about it. Like everyone has like a surface knowledge of, like a company, but if I don't like know it like enough, I never feel comfortable. Like I don't. And it doesn't bother me. Like if I didn't really know it, and the other person that I've kind of seen the idea from knew it, good for them, right? So, like you see like these FinTwit, like someone's like, oh, like they'll like do a little quick rundown of like a stock they're investing in. And like from what they've said, obviously it's compelling because if they're going to invest into that company, they're not going to go on Twitter and say, I'm about to invest in a bad company for these reasons. They're going to put the very best reasons why you should invest in that company as well. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people that put out really, really good stuff on companies. I'm not talking about the majority of Twitter. I'm saying every once in a while you'll have one come along and you'll be like, wow, this is really, really good. And then you do a little bit of digging and you come by and you're like, the stuff that he said that like wasn't, doesn't line up. But then again, there's a couple, right?
Either it was incorrect information that they might have gotten from like a third party source, right? So it might have been someone writing about the annual report, taking information from that, putting it in their own words, and then it's like the game of telephone. If you ever played as a kid, if you have a circle of 20 kids in your class, one of them says one word, 95% of the time it's not going to be the exact same word that comes around. Similar to trying to get your information directly from the companies in the annual report, as well as understanding the annual reports too. But yeah, if you're getting your information for your write-up, for an example, if it was on a Substack that you read or from Twitter itself, and they're writing information based on that, and then not doing the correct due diligence and making sure that those numbers or statistics are correct, then that's where it goes back to the point that you talked about, is how some things can be just totally incorrect and they not even know it.
Lately, like the most there's been a couple investments or investors that I've been impressed with lately, but the one that like lately really, really impressed me was Boston Omaha's management team on their investment in Dreamfinders Homes. They what was it, 10 or 11? They're 11x in 3 years, or the end of 2017, early 2018, they put 10 million, and now they have like 114 million in Dreamfinders Homes.
Yeah, no, it's like the whole bet around Boston Omaha was they were getting a quality management, as well as we were getting a pretty decent price for the company. As if it was we bet on the jockey for the long term, because if it wasn't quality management, we would have sold out when it tripled. And we would have gotten a steal of a deal, right? For letting just a regular holding company. But time and time again, I mean, if you look back to their investment in Dreamfinder Homes, they had like an initial investment. They've almost already 10x'd on that investment since was it initial investment in 2017. Dreamfinders, $10 million.
No, they did. I said that they did. They 11x'd.
Yeah, it's like okay, sorry, yeah.
End of 2017, early 2018, they 11x since then. And
no, I mean, they've done a couple other deals with Dreamfinders throughout that, but they've 11x'd it. Bought it when it was private, and then it went public, and they also bought a lot of shares at $13 a share when it did go public.
And
Um,
now,
yeah.
they have they're doing fiber to the home. So like one of their subsidiaries is a broadband company, and they're in the works of partnering with Dream Finders Homes to put fiber to the home in each of their new homes going forward, which would be huge.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I think it's gonna be huge.
Yeah. We'll have to do a deep dive on the podcast of Boston Omaha sometime here soon. But yeah, going back to just staying patient. For an example, at the time of the initial investment in Alibaba, like, I mean, nowadays I have a pretty big bet in Alibaba. If anybody follows me on Twitter at Mitch Jensen _ I believe I came out with my portfolio update July 1st. And I think I have like a 32% position at the time. That's what my Alibaba position was. And so I was sitting at the plate. I let a bunch of stuff slide by, didn't let it phase me. And I just kept looking at what Mr. Market was going to throw me next. And Mr. Market threw me Alibaba, and it was in my circle of competence, as well as a multitude of other things, quality management, et cetera, et cetera. And I swung at it, and hopefully it works out. Same with you too, Jake, right?
I think, yeah, I don't like talking too much about Alibaba just because there's a lot of opinions out there, and I don't think I can really add much value to what's already
Yeah.
out there. But one thing
Just
I
going
will
back
say,
through, just going through like your like psychology of it, just letting it, just hitting on it, I guess.
well,
Going off of
one
that.
thing I will say about the company is everyone thinks it deserves a China discount. I don't think so. I think you're going to see their cloud's really going to ramp up. And for an example, if you look at AWS over the last few years and how profitable they've become, you might see some similar characteristics going forward with Alibaba. So,
Which, tying back to our analogy of letting it slide by, you saw the the ball that was thrown from Mr. Market was almost glowing for you, eh?
I remember I had been. What's funny is I'd been investing around the same time that the Munger 13F came out. So even before that, his 13F came out. And then once I seen he got into it, I was really excited. I try not to get too excited though. I didn't want to influence me too much. But and then we seen Manish come out, and I was like, wow, like that's amazing. And then Greg Alexander came out.
Yeah,
Like,
it is hard to not allow them to influence you at all. I mean, I was talking to a guy the other day, and I was asking the difference between their analysis with Alibaba and Tencent. What's their stronger conviction? Which one and why? And they said, like, and I'm not even too far off either on this one too. Like, I've been known to do this and feel this too, but he had a stronger conviction in Alibaba just based on the fact of the amount of super investors that were in it, compared to Tencent. I'm not sure who the biggest super investor is that invests in Tencent. Do you know off the top of your head, Jake?
I think isn't Ray Dalio in Baba and Tencent, or is he just in? I can't remember now.
Yeah, I have no clue who's really in Tencent, but I know there's a lot of people in Baba. And so he said that's why he has a stronger conviction, but he has a very similar conviction if it wasn't for the super investors.
I
So
think
it's hard to not let you. What's that? Sorry.
I think Tencent's still a pretty interesting business.
Yeah.
Especially how Manish talks about looking through the NASPERS and process lens.
Yeah.
But I do think,
As well as SoftBank for Baba.
yeah, I think that I'd rather just buy Baba though. I've kind of peeked into that, and it doesn't interest me. I think the whole share, like, I guess
You're
the
buying
whole
it through
share
something.
deal,
Yeah.
basically the whole share deal with process and
It's
NASPERS threw me off, and I just didn't want to put enough time and energy into figuring out what would the outcome be after it all was done, and like how it's going to affect going forward. I just said no, not worth my time. Move on to the next thing.
Yep. And that happens all the time. You know, you open up 10K, you're not interested in it. it's too much rambling going on within the 10K, or you just don't want to even touch it. And then it's like, okay, why would I?
It's probably a mistake, but I'm okay with making it.
Yep. No, exactly. And it just goes back to the analogy that I keep on hitting home is just letting the 10 cent, or at least maybe not the 10 cent, but at least the soft bank, let that ball just slide right by that. And it's probably straight down the middle for me. Probably is. But I'm smiling. I hope everyone that's invested in 10 cent, or at least SoftBank, sorry, not 10 cent, SoftBank, does great on the investment, but just not something I'm too interested in right now. Is there much more you want to touch on about just being patient, and not, I guess,
I'd like
feeling
to
like
add,
you need to make an investment on a so-so business, or a so-so investment, whether it's a good business but it's fairly cheap, like fairly expensive. Just being patient through that.
I'd like to say that, cash gives you optionality. So you're able to do things where if you didn't have cash, you wouldn't be able to do things. I don't think you should have like a crazy amount of cash because cash drag is real.
Yeah.
But I do think, though, some cash is always good in the portfolio, especially, the market's definitely not cheap. I'm not saying that it's in a bubble, but it's definitely not cheap. There's certain stocks within the market that I could definitely say are probably good buys. Bubba being one of them, in my opinion. Do your own due diligence, though. But I really do think that cash is a good thing, especially in today's market.
Yes, I'd have to agree on that one, obviously. Cash drag is a thing. It's a real thing, and cash drag does hang on your shoulders quite heavily, puts a lot of strain on them. Um, but if there's not a good idea out there, then you're going to have to carry that weight of the cash. Um, that's that's the whole concept of struggles of having a cash position, because obviously we're not talking about like, oh, I'm struggling, like, what do I do with all my money, blah 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 blah. We're not talking about that. We're talking about struggles, like the psychological aspect of it. um, it's all a mind game. It's all based on
Definitely,
emotions. And it's just a big
definitely,
stressor. What's that, sorry?
definitely a first class problem to have all the cash you have right now.
No, no, we're joking on that one, obviously. But no, it's you know, it's one of those things that it's just all a mind game, and it's very stressful. Like, I am, to be honest, maybe a little not stressed on it, obviously, to that, but I would like to swing at something soon, but I
You could
haven't,
swing
like,
at.
yeah, just buy one. but no, I've swung big this year, and that's about it on that topic. I guess we can go into our Substacks. Do you want to discuss a little bit about that, Jake?
I think you should go first because you already have one.
Okay. So anybody that's new to Substack, I mean, we're very new to it.
Mm.
I think if you're in the fintech space, like, community, that you know a little bit more about it than most people would. So Substack is just a website for authors to write newsletters on, or like little journals or blogs, whatever it might be. Um, there's email services that you just like subscribe to, like, their email, as well as like an actual subscription that you give them money, like you're a paid subscriber of. For me and Jake, I mean, I believe so, right, Jake? Yours is free.
Yeah, once I launch mine, it'll be free for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've launched mine, and Jake's soon to be launching his. Both of them are free. Feel free to subscribe to them, join our email list. Yes, or our newsletter. My newsletter will cover the latest one. I just had an introduction, and I went over my portfolio, so my 5 holdings. If you're listening to this right now, go check it out. There's not much to
You have
say. Like,
6?
6 holdings.
Did you include cash in that?
Yeah, I had cash, but I never really talked about why. I guess this is why I have cash.
So you have
But
5 or 6 holdings with cash.
5 holdings plus cash.
So six holdings then.
Yeah.
I consider cash a holding. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. I can understand that. I don't go into detail about cash. I go into detail about the 5 companies, or 4 of the 5 companies. And then I'll have an actual write up on that 5th company. If you want to, so if you go look at it, you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about. Next week, so next Monday, I'm not sure exactly what day that would be. Do you know what day next Monday is?
I think it would be the 18th, is it? No, 19th.
19th. Okay. So Monday, July 19th is when I'd be releasing my actual write up on Boston Omaha, where I do a deep dive on them. I'll talk through the management, discuss my concerns with the company. I'll go through a couple of the case studies. So I'll explain like the DFH, like Dreamfinder's home acquisition or investment. Sorry, talk a couple acquisitions. Talk about the broadband business. Um, talk about Link Media Outdoors, the billboard company. Just go through the whole business. So if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe. There will be a link down below to our podcast, as well as if you're interested in signing up, you can just also email me at Mitch15, that's 15, Jensen, Jensen at gmail.com. Or you can just DM me on Twitter at Mitch Jensen _. I'd love to have you. Do you want to talk about yours, Jake?
Yeah, I think it'll be pretty similar. I'll just be putting out investing content. I might do an introduction like Mitch did, but I might not as well, because our introduction will be pretty similar. My portfolio is a bit different than Mitch's, but there's a lot of correlation there. I think I said on one of the last podcasts, I think we have like an 85% or so correlation in our portfolios. I'll also be going into like companies I own or companies that I find interesting. Yeah, it won't be, it'll primarily be just about value investing, I guess you could say, and business analysis and stuff. So I don't have a name for it yet, but once I do make it, I'll shout it on the podcast.
Yeah. Do you have a link to it at all right now?
No, not yet.
Okay. All right. So we'll shout it out when the time does come. And for sure, I'm going to definitely subscribe to it and read up everything. And we might go into like maybe discussion when it's just podcast with me and you on it. We might have a little segment talking about what our latest post was. I think that might be interesting. I guess we'll talk about our 4th thing, and it'll just be kind of talking about what's upcoming for our podcast. If you're a listener, you've probably noticed that we've had a couple more guests on from the Twitter community. I think we've had 5 guests on now, but within the latest 4 episodes, we've had 3. We really enjoy having a lot of guests on. I'm not sure what you guys think, but we definitely learn a lot from them. This Thursday, so right now we're recording Tuesday. This Thursday, the 15th, we will be talking to Jason Greenwald of Greenwald Capital on Twitter. He's a real estate guy. He's bought, I believe, upwards or more than 500 properties. He owns more than 10 properties right now. He's got a super interesting story, and he started investing in 2008 at the height of the financial crisis. So we're really excited to talk to him. He's also a good friend to Singe Stock Poppy, as well as a couple other guys that we've had on the podcast beforehand. And I talked to him last week, and he's just a great guy. So it should be an unreal podcast. So stay tuned for that one.
Looking forward to it as well.
Yeah. And then we have Investing with Tom on. So if anybody that's familiar with Investing with Tom, he's got one of the biggest value investing podcasts, I'd say, on YouTube right now. I think I watched every video, or maybe at least 90% of the videos. He's got a lot of good stuff. Just about Pabrai, talks about Guy Spear, goes through Warren Buffett, he goes through a lot of Alibaba stuff. He talks a lot about Seritage Growth Properties. So if you have a similar portfolio, I'd definitely go check him out. We have him the following day. So we have him Friday. He's got 25,000 subscribers on YouTube. 27,000 now.
Yeah,
1.4 million views on YouTube. So he's pretty well known, and we're excited to have him on. Somebody that's from the YouTube space. And yeah, we're just excited to have him on. Is there anything else that you want to add today, Jake?
No, I'm really looking forward to this week, though.
Yeah, it's going to be a great week. We're going to have some great guests on. And then after investing with Tom on Friday, the following week, we should have a Q&A. So if you're interested in asking us a question, you can reach out at moneyunderthemattress.podcast@gmail.com, or you can DM us on Twitter. I'll say mine, Mitch Jensen _. And then what's yours, Jake?
I believe it is, I just want to make sure it's correct, at Invest Condensely.
Perfect. So you can just DM us there, and we'll make a post about it also. So yeah, great. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and look forward to those 3 podcasts coming up. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Money Under the Mattress. If you have any questions about this episode, you can email us at moneyunderthemattress.podcast@gmail.com. Everything discussed in this podcast is our opinion and should not be used as investment advice. This podcast is for your entertainment and education purposes only, and we hope that you enjoyed it.